The scent of fresh paint and old wood filled our new home, a 3-bedroom suburban house we'd bought for its quiet street and good school district. It was meant to be our anchor, a place for our son, Ethan, to grow, for my wife, Sarah, and me to finally catch our breath after years of city living and the relentless grind of young parenthood. I'm Mark, an architect, a man who believes in blueprints and solid foundations. Our foundation, I thought, was finally stable. Then Ethan started talking about her. He was 5, a bright, imaginative boy, but prone to bouts of intense shyness. When he first mentioned her, we laughed it off. "There's a girl under my bed," he'd announced at breakfast, munching his cereal. "She tells me secrets." Sarah chuckled. "Oh, does she? What kind of secrets?" Ethan just shrugged, his eyes wide. "Just secrets. She doesn't like the light." We chalked it up to an imaginary friend, a common phase for only children, a little quirky but harmless. A way for him to cope with moving to a new, unfamiliar house. But the secrets started to get unsettling. Minor things at first. "The goldfish likes the green flakes best," he'd whisper, even though we'd only just bought the fish that morning and hadn't experimented with food colors yet. Then, Mommy sad about the red vase. Sarah's favorite vase, a sentimental gift, had indeed shattered that afternoon, a mishap I hadn't even mentioned to Ethan. Our smiles began to feel strained, our reassurances to each other a little less convincing. The atmosphere in Ethan's room started to shift, a subtle chill, even with the heat on, a faint, almost imperceptible scent, like dust, and something sweet, yet cloying, like wilting flowers, left in a closed room. We'd tuck him in at night, dim the nightlight to a soft glow, and turn off the main light. "She doesn't like the light," Ethan would remind us, pulling his blanket up to his chin. We'd always check under the bed, a quick glance, a reassuring pat, but it was always empty. Just dust bunnies and forgotten toys. Then came the night the laughter started. It was just after 2 a.m. I was half asleep when a soft, airy giggle drifted from Ethan's room. It wasn't Ethan's giggle. It was higher, lighter, almost ethereal. My blood ran cold. I nudged Sarah awake. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice thick with dread. She sat bolt upright, her eyes wide. "Ethan," she breathed. Another giggle, clearer this time, echoed through the quiet house. It was a child's laugh, filled with a strange, unnatural mirth. We crept to Ethan's room, our hearts hammering against our ribs. The door was slightly ajar. A sliver of moonlight from his window cut across the floor, highlighting the dark space under his bed. The giggling continued, soft and playful, undeniably coming from beneath the mattress. But as we peered in, Ethan was fast asleep in his bed, deeply, peacefully, his little chest rising and falling with innocent breaths. His nightlight cast a faint, comforting glow on his sleeping face. The laughter from beneath his bed continued, now joined by a soft, rhythmic whispering, too indistinct to make out. My blood ran cold, a wave of pure, unadulterated dread washing over me. I knew, with a horrifying certainty that chilled me to my very bones, that if we didn't look under that bed now, if we allowed that sound to continue, our nightmare would truly begin. My body was rigid, every muscle tense, my gaze fixed on the dark abyss beneath Ethan's bed. The giggling continued, a playful yet utterly chilling sound, now punctuated by those low, rhythmic whispers. Sarah clutched my arm, her nails digging into my flesh. The faint scent of dust and wilting flowers intensified, filling Ethan's room, a cloying sweetness that made my stomach churn. This wasn't just Ethan's imagination. This was a deliberate, undeniable presence. We stood there, paralyzed by fear, and a terrifying sense of responsibility. Every instinct screamed at us to yank Ethan from the bed, to flee the house, to smash the bed to splinters. But a chilling fascination, born of desperate terror for our child and a lifetime of trying to solve the unsolvable, held me captive. My fear wasn't just for our physical safety, but for the erosion of our logical, ordered world, for the delicate balance of our family. My past, a messy tapestry of professional ambition and suppressed anxieties, felt like it was unraveling. I had always dismissed anything supernatural, a pragmatist to my core, but ever since the move, a deep unease had settled in. I remembered the strange, fragmented dreams I'd had. I was walking through an endless, silent house, but from every room, I could hear faint giggling, and sometimes a small, cold hand would brush my ankle from beneath the closed doors. I'd always blamed it on stress. Now the memory felt ominously prophetic. My fear wasn't just for Ethan, but for the insidious realization that the foundation of our life was cracking and something was crawling out from beneath it. Subtle oddities began to punctuate our days. Ethan's toys, left meticulously organized at night, would be scattered across his floor in the morning, sometimes arranged in strange, indecipherable patterns. A particular antique porcelain doll Sarah had placed on his shelf, a family heirloom, would occasionally be found face down on the floor, its glass eyes staring blankly at the underside of the bed. Sarah complained of unexplained cold spots in the house, particularly around Ethan's room, fleeting chills that had no logical source. Even our usually boisterous golden retriever Buster began to avoid Ethan's room altogether, whining and cowering whenever he even approached the doorway, his hackles raised at unseen things. The most unnerving foreshadowing came from Ethan himself. He stopped talking about the girl under the bed directly. Instead, he started speaking in cryptic sentences, secrets he hadn't learned from us. "The old lady next door waters her flowers at dawn," he'd declare, even though he never woke before 7 a.m. "Daddy's car has a tiny scratch on the back bumper," a scratch I'd just gotten that morning after dropping him off at school and hadn't mentioned. His innocence amplified the horror, as if he was merely a mouthpiece for the unseen presence. The tension in the house became palpable. Every evening as dusk settled, a quiet dread would begin to coil in my stomach. The soft creaks of the old house, once charming, now sounded like deliberate footsteps. The gentle hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, usually a background noise, now felt like a low, resonant thrum, a vibration that permeated the very foundations of the house, and always that faint, musty scent, like old dust and wilting flowers, would drift through the air, most prominent near Ethan's bedroom. Sarah, usually so grounded, grew withdrawn, her eyes constantly darting towards the floor, towards the space under Ethan's bed. She started leaving a small lamp on in his room at night, a desperate, silent defiance against the growing darkness. We found ourselves whispering in our own home, afraid to break the suffocating silence, afraid of what might listen, what might respond. Our casual conversations became terse, strained, punctuated by unspoken fears. We were aware of the problem, but utterly powerless. The girl under the bed wasn't just an imaginary friend, she was a chilling secret keeper, whispering our anxieties back to us and preparing to make her next terrifying move. The incessant whispers from under Ethan's bed, the haunting giggling, and the chillingly accurate secrets had pushed us to the brink. We couldn't live with the dread any longer. Sarah, pale and resolute, voiced the unspoken truth. "We have to look. We have to know." My heart hammered, a frantic drum against my ribs. I armed myself with a heavy flashlight, its beam a stark, defiant cut through the dim room. Ethan slept on, undisturbed, a terrifying island of innocence in a sea of growing dread. The faint scent of wilting flowers and dust thickened, cloying and sweet, as I slowly knelt beside Ethan's bed. Sarah stood behind me, her hand pressed against my back, a silent anchor in a world that was rapidly losing its footing. The giggling from beneath the bed continued, soft and playful, like a child's game, but with an underlying current of something ancient and predatory. It was too close, too real. With a trembling hand, I aimed the flashlight under the bed and flicked it on. The beam cut through the gloom, illuminating nothing. Just dust bunnies, a stray building block, and the bare wooden floorboards. My breath caught in my throat. The space was empty, utterly, terrifyingly empty. Yet the giggling persisted, as clear and distinct as if a child were sitting right there, inches from my face. My mind reeled. This wasn't possible. My grip on sanity felt tenuous, like a thread about to snap. Was I hallucinating? Was the stress and fear finally manifesting into a shared psychosis with Sarah? The line between reality and nightmare didn't just blur, it dissolved completely. The room itself seemed to waver around us, the familiar furniture subtly shifting its form, the walls breathing. The air grew thicker, heavier, pressing down on my chest until it felt like an unseen weight was crushing me. And then the sound changed. The giggling faded, replaced by a low, guttural moan, long and drawn out, a sound of immense suffering and despair. It seemed to vibrate from the very floorboards, seeping into the air around us, heavy and oppressive. It wasn't the laughter of a child, it was the sorrow of something trapped. And through the horrifying din, I could hear it, faint but distinct, a sound like tiny knuckles gently tapping against wood. Tap, 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 from inside the wooden bed frame itself. Sarah gasped, her grip on my back tightening to a painful claw. "Mark," she choked out, her voice a raw whisper. It's not under the bed. It's in the bed." A wave of nausea washed over me, a dizzying sense of disorientation. The room spun around me, not physically, but as if my perception of it was being twisted, warped. My own hands clutching the flashlight looked alien, enlarged, then shrunken, like a funhouse mirror reflection. My sense of time, too, was fractured. Minutes felt like hours, then seconds. Was this a curse, madness, a ghost? Or something far more ancient, something that played with the very fabric of our family, our home? Through the agonizing moans and the chilling whispers, Ethan stirred in his sleep. His small body shifted, and he murmured, not a childish sound, but a low, raspy whisper, startlingly clear. She says you shouldn't have looked." His eyes remained closed, his face still in peaceful slumber, but the voice was undeniably the same one I'd heard from under the bed that first terrifying night. A horrifying realization dawned on me, colder than the deepest well. The girl under the bed wasn't just a separate entity, she was connected to Ethan. Perhaps she was a part of him now. Or he a part of her? The secrets, the chilling knowledge? It had all come from her, through him. And our act of looking under the bed, our defiance, had only revealed the terrifying truth. And then, as a final, soul-shattering shriek tore through the air, emanating not from under the bed, but from Ethan's sleeping form, the moan from within the bed frame stopped. The tapping ceased. The scent of wilting flowers and dust vanished. The room was plunged into an absolute, suffocating silence. but I could still feel it, that cold, vast presence now radiating from our own child. My physical body slumped to the floor, my vision blurring. The last thing I saw before darkness consumed me was Ethan's peaceful, smiling face, bathed in the soft glow of his nightlight. His eyes were still closed, but for a fleeting moment I swore I saw a faint, knowing flicker deep within their depths. My nightmare was far from over. It had just begun. The darkness that consumed me was absolute, a void more profound than any sleep. There was no pain, no sound, just an endless, terrifying emptiness. My mind, however, was still screaming, replaying Ethan's chilling whisper, the impossible sound of the girl's wails from inside his bed, and the profound cold certainty that something had just shifted. When consciousness finally flickered back, it was not with relief, but with a new, insidious terror. I lay on the cold wooden floor of Ethan's room. The single nightlight still cast its faint, comforting glow. Sarah was kneeling beside me, her face pale, her hands trembling as she helped me up. Ethan was still asleep in his bed, deeply, peacefully, his little chest rising and falling with innocent breaths. The room appeared perfectly normal, mundane even. No lingering scent, no chill, no sound. It was as if the terrifying climax had been a shared hallucination. But I knew, we both knew. The quiet was more terrifying than any scream. There was no peaceful resolution, only a terrifying, unsettling quiet. My body ached, a deep, bone-weary exhaustion settling into my limbs. As I struggled to regain my footing, Sarah pulled me into a tight embrace, her body shaking. "What was that, Mark?" she whispered, her voice raw with suppressed terror. "What happened?" I had no answers. How could I explain that the terror wasn't under the bed, but in it? That it wasn't just a presence, but a possessor? The ensuing days were a blur of hushed conversations and strained normalcy. We tried to convince ourselves it was stress, a shared nightmare. We even talked about seeing a therapist, but the words felt hollow. How do you explain this? The subtle oddities, however, continued, deepening our horror. Ethan's conversations with his imaginary friend ceased entirely. He stopped talking about the girl under the bed. This, we initially thought, was a sign of relief, until the other changes began. The ultimate twist revealed itself slowly, insidiously, like a creeping shadow. Ethan, always an early riser, started sleeping late, often until noon. He became more withdrawn, his usual playful energy replaced by a quiet, almost contemplative demeanor. His eyes, once bright and curious, now held a strange, ancient knowing, a depth that was unnerving for a 5-year-old. And his secrets continued. But they were no longer about us. They were about the house. The old oak tree in the backyard saw Mrs. Davison steal the mail last week, he'd casually mention, eyes fixed on his cereal, oblivious to our shocked stares. Mrs. Davison, our quiet, elderly neighbor, had recently been suspected of petty thefts. "The pipes in the bathroom make that noise when they're cold, not when they're hot," he'd correct me, a faint, knowing smirk on his face. He knew the house intimately, its creaks, its whispers, its hidden histories, as if he had always lived within its very walls. The haunting questions now revolved around Ethan himself. Was the girl truly gone? Or had she simply become integrated, a silent passenger within our son? The lingering impact of this revelation was profound. The paranoia that had always simmered beneath the surface of my life flared into a full-blown inferno. Every time Ethan spoke, every time he looked at me with those unnervingly deep eyes, I saw not just my son, but the shadow of the girl under the bed, whispering her secrets through his innocent lips. My world, once a stable blueprint, was now a fractured, terrifying landscape of dread. I found myself obsessively checking the house, the walls, the foundations, searching for any sign of a hidden cavity, a forgotten space, a place where a child could hide for decades. But there was nothing. Only the solid, comforting structure of our home, now a prison. We had survived the night, but we were not whole. Our son was not whole. We were merely living in a temporary reprieve, forever bound to the insidious presence that now resided within our own child. The silence in Ethan's room now is profound, unsettling. No more giggling from beneath the bed, no more whispers, but the quiet is a deceptive blanket, covering a deeper, more chilling truth. My experience taught me a horrifying lesson. Some fears aren't external. They become part of you, a secret whispered from within. My fear for Ethan is a constant companion, a cold hand squeezing my heart. The trauma of helplessness, of realizing that the innocent laughter of my child was a siren call to something unspeakable, has become the bedrock of my existence. We didn't banish the girl under the bed. She simply found a new, more intimate hiding place. Our survival feels less like a victory and more like a permanent state of being watched, a silent participant in a horrifying secret. Ethan still sleeps soundly, still draws his innocent pictures. But sometimes, when the light catches his eyes just right, I see it. A flicker of something ancient, something that has known darkness and confinement for far too long. He still shares his secrets, casual observations about the town, about people, about things he couldn't possibly know. And sometimes, when he whispers them, his voice drops to a lower register, a dry, raspy sound that sends a shiver down my spine. It's the voice of the girl under the bed telling her secrets now. Sarah remains in blissful, terrifying ignorance, attributing Ethan's changes to the natural quirks of growing up. And I can't tell her. How do you tell your wife that her son is sharing his body with a ghost? How do you explain that the girl under the bed isn't gone, but merely integrated? I often find myself standing by Ethan's bed late at night, watching him sleep. Not for the whispers now, but for the silence. Because sometimes, when the house is still, and Ethan is perfectly quiet, I hear it. A faint, almost imperceptible click, 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 like tiny knuckles tapping against wood coming from inside his mattress. It's the sound of her, still there, still playing. And as I listen, a cold dread washes over me, because I know what she's waiting for. She's waiting for Ethan to grow older, for his mind to become more complex, more capable of understanding. And then she will have complete control. And one night, very soon, I will hear that click, click, click. And it won't be just for Ethan. It will be for me too. And then there will be no more secrets. Only silence. And a strange, knowing smile on my son's lips.